it was really great to take the experiences from my private life in the business world and get to apply them at Mary Washington and work with the team and work with other board members to, I feel like, make some really cool changes. And it just, that hits different at this point in my life. And
well, you came in at a critical time. I couldn't be more grateful for your leadership on that foundation board. Hi, this is Troy Pano, the president at the University of Mary Washington, and welcome to What Matters Most. I have a very special guest today, Lou Marmo. He is a 1994 graduate of what was then known as Mary Washington College, and we'll get into that a little bit, but my guess is Lou prefers to continue to call it Mary Washington College, where he majored in business administration, and I believe you nearly finished a second major in geography. Since graduating, Lou's career has spanned many areas, and it landed him in several C-suite positions, and we'll get into that in our podcast today. After graduation, he started with a company where he had interned, briefly pivoted into education as a substitute teacher and coach before getting back into the business world and completing an MBA. During a brief retirement in 2022, we were fortunate that Lou brought his extensive experience and expertise to the Mary Washington Foundation when he joined the UMW Foundation Board, helping advance its mission to support the university and provide opportunities for students, faculty, and staff. We'll talk a little bit with Lou about his journey to Mary Washington. Welcome to the show, Lou.
Thanks, Troy. Good morning.
Yeah, thrilled to have you.
Thrilled to be here.
I think you have, one of the things about being the president, I get an opportunity to learn about the different sort of eras of Mary Washington. We still have alums who are very engaged from the 1950s and 60s when it was an all-women's school, Mary Washington College, and some of them want to be quick to remind me it's Mary Washington College of the University of Virginia. Then we have the alums of kind of the 70s and 80s, but I really kind of put sort of the peak of the co-ed Mary Washington College days as the 1990s. And now maybe I'm biased because my chief of staff graduated the same year that you did, and we'll probably get into that relationship a little bit. So that also brings a different era, and I want us to talk about that era in the 1990s and what it was like. And then there's certainly a 21st century era that you will be dealing with here in just a few weeks, because one of the reasons why you're here with us today is that you are going to be our commencement speaker. Now, just to let the listeners know, we are taping this before commencement. It will be aired after commencement. So just want everyone to understand kind of the sequence of our conversation. So Lou, tell our listeners a little bit about yourself in terms of your background, where you're from, what your family was like prior to Mary Washington.
Sure. Yeah, so I grew up in New Jersey, about 10, 15 minutes from the beach, prior to the Jersey Shore getting the bad reputation it now has after a certain MTV show in the 2000s. My dad was a middle school principal. My mom was a Catholic school teacher, so grew up with education as a foundation and weren't getting away from it. And I would say we found out about Mary Washington through good family friends. Their daughter, who was a couple years older, they had looked at Mary Washington. She unfortunately didn't get in when she applied back in the late 80s. And so when I was doing my college search, they had suggested you should go down and see Mary Washington. And although it's pretty cliche at this point, just fell in love with the campus from the first time I stepped foot here. Absolutely loved it. I also applied to the University of Richmond. Was still living in New Jersey at the time, but it was far enough away. Got into both those schools, and like any good teenager, based my decision on my parents saying, hey, you could keep your car if you go to Mary Washington, although we're going to have to sell it if you go to University of Richmond, which at the time was probably like 2x Mary Washington. And so I said, yeah, I'll keep my car and I'll go to Mary Washington. And it was the best decision I ever made. So.
Yeah, like any reasonable 18-year-old
Yeah,
would
exactly.
do. I mean, if given that choice, I mean, that's
Yeah.
a no-brainer. So, it's interesting when I meet with alums from the 90s, there was a pretty good pipeline of students coming down from the Northeast,
Yes.
from New York, Long Island, New Jersey. Could you explain, from your own perspective, did you want to get out of the Northeast and go south? What was the attraction?
I think when you look at the college system in New Jersey that I can speak to, there's nothing really like schools that you see in Virginia and North Carolina with the brick schools and the green grass, and you have Rutgers and a couple other like city schools, but there's nothing that kind of gives you that college feel. And I think it's close enough where you can still hop in a car and go see your family on, Thanksgiving or Christmas or, Christmas break. But it's far enough away where you don't have your parents dropping in every weekend. So I think it was just like a perfect mix. And back then, from a cost perspective, it was extremely reasonable.
It was still competitive.
Competitive
with that
relative
out-of-state
to
tuition.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
So
talk a little bit about your Mary Washington experience. What was it like going to school here in the 90s? And you said it ended up being a great decision, one of the better decisions of your life to come here. Could you explain to our listeners why that is? What was special about your time here at Mary Washington?
I think it's got to start with the people, right? And that's both friends who became lifelong friends. You talked about Jeff McClurkin earlier. I would say in college we had different journeys and different ways we wanted to approach our college lives. Jeff likes to share some of the stories because he was freshman year roommates with the person who became my best friend in life, Chris Houchins.
So he had a front row seat to the Lou Marmo show.
So he had a front row seat to some of the activities that might have been going on a Thursday, Friday, Saturday night occasionally. And so I felt like the people, I made great friends here. I think the size of the school, while very, once again, very cliche, but I had some of the best relationships with professors, with administrators. I'll talk about Cedric Rucker, who was dean of student life when I was here, and Professor Crawley, who is still active around the university.
Yep.
And when I see him, he still remembers details of classes we had with him. And Professor Palmieri, who's no longer with us, but like you said earlier, I was about a class or two short of a geography minor because of I just wanted to take all his classes.
Yeah.
And so I think, between the friends I made, the relationships with professors, and then just this broad liberal arts education. And, to be fair, going into it as a student, that wasn't one of my reasons for coming here, but as I look back on things, having that broad-based education, I think is super important. Because as I went along in my career, at least in the business sense, it's not like you're learning anything in a classroom that's going to last longer than your first year or two of your career, right? That you're going to be able to apply. It's how do you communicate with people? How do you build relationships with people? How do you learn? Right? It's those sort of things that are going to help you throughout your career and your life. And I think those are all the things that Mary Washington instilled in me. And I think I talk to students coming here and do some events and things like that. And I'm always one of the biggest skill sets I learned here was as an 18-year-old, how to communicate with adults.
Yeah.
Right? And even when you come out of college, you're still only 22. You're still a kid. And now all of a sudden you're thrown into this world of all these adults. And how do you communicate with them? And how do you put your best foot forward and get your points across and build relationships with people who may be 10, 15, 20 years older? And I think, I was able to do that here because of some of the just incredible professors and administrators that this culture kind of helps build.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad to hear you say that because that's my pitch to prospective students, and even current students, that we get hung up on, what you major in and what you might be learning in a particular class. But as we certainly know now in the age of artificial intelligence, there's no way of predicting what is going to be demanded of us 5, 10, 15 years from now, probably even 12 months from now. So it's really that capacity to adapt, to learn, to think critically, to communicate effectively, to build relationships. Those are the things that are going to keep you in good stead throughout your life.
I wholeheartedly believe that. I mean, that's what we've instilled with our kids.
Yeah.
And I mean, when I'm talking to students or recent grads, I mean, I try to continue to kind of drive that point home because that's what I've seen. That's what's made me successful. I was never the smartest person sitting in a room. I was, but I think I was the skills that I learned at Mary Washington and the mindset I had that I applied to it, and just wanting to be the best I could be. I think that is kind of what helped catapult me.
So. Yeah. So let's stay on the topic of your career and your life after Mary Washington. Tell the listeners a little bit, because you've been on an interesting journey. I'd be curious, when you came to Mary Washington, you said your dad was a principal, and I know you dabbled in education. When you came here initially, were you thinking you might be an educator?
No. Okay. So my dad was very adamant that I was not going to be an educator. Coming from education, he felt like you weren't rewarded for being better or achieving more than your peers, because it's all tenure-based and all that at that level that he was at as a middle school principal. And so, no, he was like, you are going to study business. And that's what I did. And fortunately got to dabble in a lot of other stuff because of that liberal arts background. And when I graduated, I came out, worked for a company for about a year that I had interned with. And I was just like, I have this education, I want to try it. Like I saw my parents doing it. It seemed like a lot of fun. I had a lot of good relationships with people, with teachers from high school and middle school still. And I got into it and went back to school to get my teaching degree with substitute teaching. Got to coach my middle school basketball team.
Nice.
Got to coach a JV softball team at my high school. And yeah, there was probably a little friction with my dad during those times because he was just
he did not want it.
He did not want it. And, I'm just like, I don't get this. And now as a parent, you kind of, you understand it a little bit more. He's trying to put you in a position to be as successful as you can. But I think you kind of have to live through different things. And what I learned going through it was like, oh, these teachers work pretty hard. They put in a lot of hours. Oh, this is still pretty political. And and so all of a sudden you're like, okay, if I'm going to deal with all this stuff, I might as well be in the business world and try to maximize my earning potential as well. And I would say it still took me, that I was probably like 23, 24 at that time. It still took me another 5 or 6 years to really figure out, okay, like here's the goal of where I think I can get to and where I think I could have some fun and be successful and provide for family and all those things. So I tell people all the time, like I was 30 years old before I kind of had even a inkling of a plan of where I thought I could possibly take my career. And even then I didn't really know how to get there other than, okay, I'm going to put my head down, work hard and try to learn as much as possible and move forward. But, yeah. And, my wife and I had very different, like she knew when she was 17 years old, 16 years old, what she wanted to do. And so I'm always telling the kids, yeah, you'll figure it out.
Yep.
So but I think everybody finds their
it's a
different
good balance.
path.
Yeah, it's good to get
balance.
both messages and figure it out.
Yeah.
I was more like you. I tell my daughters that, your 20s are really an opportunity to explore, to figure out what you're good at.
Yep.
Try to align what you're good at with a career
that
exactly. demands those things.
Yeah.
And sometimes it takes a while. I'm like you. I didn't really start my education career in higher ed until I was 34. I practiced law until I was 28, went back to get my PhD, didn't graduate till I was 34. It really took me my 20s to kind of figure out what my path was going to be.
Yep.
And I kind of went in a different direction than you, but it's similar.
Yeah. I think there's no right or wrong when it comes to that stuff. I think you really have to figure it out. And I tell students all the time, like with internships, it's like, hey, don't worry if you had an internship and it's not what you liked or what you want to do. You actually just figured something out. You figured out like a path you don't want to go, and the more you can do that and the quicker you can do that with different experiences, the better off you're going to be. Don't take like 10 years like I did.
Yeah, if you know, there's no sense dithering.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit, once your entry back into the business world.
Yep.
And then your journey to really multiple C-suite positions, and your career is still going. Every time I think you've retired, they pull you back in.
Yep.
So I'd like the listeners to hear a little bit more about your journey and what you think was ultimately the secret sauce in helping you be successful on that journey.
Yeah, I think, how long do we have? But I think at the end of the day, I liked numbers and I liked finance. I didn't love accounting, at least from the standpoint of what was in the classroom, as much as I love Professor Frackleton and still keep in touch with him to this day and learned a lot from him. Like from a classroom standpoint, accounting did not interest me, and I was not interested in a CPA or anything like that. So I really focused more on the finance side of things. Mm-hmm. And I kind of stumbled into manufacturing. And I liked understanding the way my brain worked is like, here are the numbers. Here's what's going on in a plant, whatever we were making. Early in my career, it was chemicals and became precision components for different industries and things like that. What are the numbers telling me about what's going on in the plant? And then how do I translate that to be able to explain to people within the company, to explain to our lenders, to explain to our board, whoever it might be, like what's going on, good and bad, and then what are some decisions we can make to improve the numbers, or if they're going in the right direction, to kind of pour gasoline on it and try to improve them even more. And so I would say that was the key to unlocking things. I wouldn't say I was consciously doing that. It was just you said it earlier, right? Like find something that you're interested in, find something that you're good at. And I think going back, like tying this back to my Mary Washington education, I think I was able to kind of translate complex things into a simple way of looking at them. It's just like, I think I chalk it up to I have a very simple mind. And so I needed to understand it in a way that was simple. And then that helped me talk to people who either were like a step away from the business as a lender or a board member and not in it day to day, or somebody who's in a plant or in sales or in marketing or engineering who don't look at numbers all day long.
Well, I know this is something I tell both students and my daughters, that relationships, the point you were making, so important. Be careful not to burn bridges. I always that's another one. But one thing that I have found, and I attribute to any success I've had in my life and career, is that others, for whatever reason, stepped outside themselves and invested in me. And you talked about that certainly happening. That's some of the secret sauce of Mary Washington. But I'm curious about life after Mary Washington. Did you have any mentors who saw something in you and said, hey, this is someone who has the ability and the capability to be a leader, and I'm going to invest, I'm going to mentor, I'm going to advise? Is there anyone in your life like that?
I would say when I was at Precision, which is kind of when I kind of found my footing, probably about 7 or 8 years into my career, I ended up spending half my career there. There was a CFO, and I wouldn't say he actively became a mentor, but he was somebody who didn't have a CPA, was a CFO, and involved me in a lot of stuff, both because I could be a doer, but I think he, whether it was intentional or not, he was a good mentor for me and a good example of where I could get to without having a CPA, because in today's world, to be a CFO without a CPA is pretty common. 20 years ago, not as common. Yeah. And so I think that gave me somebody like, okay, this is possible. And going back to my earlier comments, that's when I was kind of like, I'd like to be a CFO someday. And let me watch this guy because he's been successful. I'd say the other person, when I got my first CFO job at Precision, it was a tumultuous situation. The company had gone through like 18 months of not knowing whether we were going to go bankrupt, what was going to happen. and the lenders came in and actually took over the company in an out-of-court debt for equity swap. So they basically gave up their debt, and they now own the company. Going back to relationship building, fortunately, I had a really good relationship with the lenders through the years. I'd always been honest with them, told them what was going well, told them what wasn't going well, and what we were trying to do to fix it. And so they gave me an opportunity. They said, hey, we're going to bring in a new CEO. We're firing the entire corporate team of like 20 people. If you can hit it off with this CEO, like, we want you to be a CFO of this business. And I would say that gentleman gave me an opportunity. He had a real strong operations background. I'd worked with companies like GE and Danaher, and but had never been in this private equity space before. So we were like this perfect match. He was willing to learn that space from me. He taught me a lot about operations and, you know, setting the right cadence and rigor in a business, and is a friend to this day. And he was he was definitely what I would call the mentor that came to me kind of a little bit later in my career. Yeah. But I would not be where I am today without him. Like, he gave me an opportunity. He taught me a ton. He involved me in everything. I was a true partner to him. And yeah, we had a lot of fun and a lot of success. And yeah, it was good.
So I know from my own experience that some of the most difficult parts of your journey when you are running a business or leading a business or an organization that is going through a challenging time, while stressful, it is also an opportunity for great growth. And I know that, and please, if I'm mischaracterizing this in any way, I see you now that you have built up sort of a reputation of someone who can come in to an organization. Maybe it's gone through some challenges and there needs to be someone to come in and kind of clean it up and get it ready, maybe to be sold or to move on to the next level. Was it those experiences that you had there that helped you sort of learn how to do that?
That was exactly it. So I had spent 9 years at Precision, and we had done a bunch of acquisitions. And, you know, during that time, I think I saw some things where I'm like, hey, if I'm ever in a leadership role in that C-suite, I think I would try it differently. Mm-hmm. I don't really like this and this and this. I would say that first 9 years, I learned a lot of what I didn't want to do when I was a leader, but never really got the opportunity to apply it. And then when the new CEO came in, I had kind of this list of stuff when we sat down in like the first week. And I said, hey, Gary, this is all the stuff like I'm seeing that I think we should try to get after pretty quickly. And that was more tactical, but there was some strategic stuff in that too. And he was like, go. But I think the other thing I saw is like how he set up how we ran that company day in and day out, and how we held people accountable, and how we set metrics, and how we didn't tolerate people who weren't going to get on the bus. I mean, I think that was one of the big things I learned on, you know, and it's just the reality of life is like, the most fun part of my jobs is identifying those superstars and giving them a path to grow. But one of the things you also have to do as a leader is find those people who are not willing to change or are not, you know, willing to put the effort forth. And you owe it to everybody else in the organization to move on from those folks. And I think that's one of the big lessons I learned from him as well, is you can't be afraid to make those decisions, because the way he always put it to me, we had like 1,000 employees at that time. And he's like, hey, every decision we make is, you know, you have 5,000 lives, because all these employees have families, and they're trying to support them. And so we have to make the decisions that are best for like everybody. And that always sticks with me.
I refer to it as addition by subtraction. Sometimes you have to make those tough decisions to move an organization forward. Never easy, but yes, you got to look out for the collective and the mission of the organization.
I've done it way too many times, and a lot of my friends from prior jobs like to joke with me about like I'm the one who has the reputation of coming in and not being afraid to make those decisions. But I still, to this day, when I have to do that, I don't sleep the night before. I have to have that conversation. No matter how much somebody I feel deserves it or not, you're still like...
Hey, they're people, right?
Yep.
Yeah, they're people.
Exactly.
So, you know, I know from personal experience when you came onto the foundation board, that you brought that at a time when we needed it. We were looking to reform and the foundation board, and having you and your experience in how to do that was invaluable to the foundation. So thank you. But I'm curious, because you have now you're at a stage in your life, in your career, where you're giving back to Mary Washington. And so I would be curious as to why you've made that decision to give of your precious time to serve on things like the foundation board and in other capacities. Why are you giving back in that way?
Yeah, I think, and we're doing this before, and people hear this in the commencement speech, but I think you kind of I kind of lost touch a little bit with Mary Washington, not so much with friends and stuff, but like with the institution and the part of it. I don't know if it was going back to New Jersey and not being in Virginia for a while, and always had like the best feelings about this place and the best memories and all that, but just never got connected. And it kind of was like a singular moment when my family and I, after a successful sale of Precision, we worked our way out of a job, knew that was coming. Like if we had done a good job, I was going to be looking for the next adventure. And the family and I decided to move down to Virginia for better quality of life. Mm-hmm. And so I was doing networking down in Virginia, and I said, hey, you know what? Let me reach out to Cedric. He knows a ton of people. Knew him when I was here. Probably the last time I had seen him was maybe our 5-year reunion. And I'll never forget, I was sitting in a meeting, like I was getting ready for a meeting before we were trying to sell one of the divisions of Precision, and I had about an hour of time to kill. And I said, let me get this email out. I said, hopefully I'll hear from him in the next couple of weeks or something. And I hit send on the email, and people don't believe this, but like 30 seconds later, my phone rings and it's Cedric. And I'm like, and he's like, hey, so, he was just so happy to hear I was coming back to Virginia. We were moving to the Richmond area where Cedric spent a lot of time. He had people for me to talk to and network with. And, it was just that moment where I was like, wow, it just like everything just came flooding back, right? Yeah. All these good memories, all this, why I love this place so much. And I was like, hey, I gotta figure out a way to get back connected. And, coincidentally, around the same time, a couple months later, met somebody in Richmond who became a good friend, whose father-in-law was Rick Hurley. Okay. And Lynn Richardson was the dean of the business school at the time, and she was trying to build out an advisory board for the College of Business. And so that was kind of, Rick introduced me to Lynn, and that was kind of the way to get in, reconnect. And I just, through that, have met so many, like I would call dear personal friends of mine who we were at school here at the same time, but didn't know each other, didn't cross paths. And it just kind of continued that same journey that I had during my 4 years here of just meeting great people, continuing to learn. And, you get to a point in your career, it's just, you have kids and you're like, hey, I would want somebody to do this for my kid if they were at, wherever they're going to school or something. And I think it's just, you want to kind of give back, and it's sort of just grown from there. Yeah. And the foundation experience, I tell people all the time, my retirement was not that brief. It was like 3 years, just for the record. But I tell everybody that 3-year period, I think it happened for a reason. And one of those reasons was for me to spend some time on some really cool projects for the foundation. And that is like the highlight of my career. Yeah. Like, it was really great to take the experiences from my private life in the business world and get to apply them at Mary Washington and work with the team and work with other board members to, I feel like, make some really cool changes. And it just, that hits different at this point in my life. And well, you came in at a critical time. I couldn't be more grateful for your leadership on that foundation board. When I see the growth, I tell people when I got here, the endowment was about
40 million, and the debt was around 160 million.
Yeah.
And now the endowment is approaching 140 million, and we have almost no debt.
Yep.
So it's been really a remarkable transformation, and you played a critical role in that transformation. So thank you.
Yeah.
So this is after commencement. The listeners will be listening to
Yep.
it, but we're talking before. But so one of the things that is certainly known about you is that you have a tattoo
Yes.
with MWC.
Yes.
So I am curious. First of all, how many beers did you have before doing that?
Totally sober. I've
Okay,
never
so-
had a drink
okay.
before any of my 20-something
Fantastic.
tattoos.
Okay, I just
so.
wanted to be clear with the listeners. This was done in a moment of sobriety.
Yep.
So when and why?
So I had a few early tattoos prior to moving down to Richmond. My brother and I went and got what I call a starter kit tattoo 30 years ago. When my wife and I got engaged, I got her name tattooed. And then after our second child, and we knew we were going to have two, I got a tattoo for them. And then I went through about a 7 or 8 year period of no tattoos. Mm-hmm. And it just wasn't as much of a thing. And then you move down to Richmond. So all my tattoos are very tangible. I think there's two worlds. There's worlds where people are very artistic and they design things that have meaning to them. But if you looked at it, you might not know what that meaning is. And it's more like a piece of art.
Right.
Mine, way my brain works, it's very tangible. So it's family. It's our dogs, which are part of the family. It's Bruce Springsteen, who is kind of my, spiritual
I'm
person.
seeing him in May. I'm excited.
I just saw him this past weekend in San Francisco. So, and then, so it's things that are close to me. And that's the reason why is hey, this place was really important to me and important to my journey. It was probably about 7 years ago. It was in the midst of I was getting about 2 to 3 a year. And I just really wanted to do something. I was telling these guys before the podcast, I went out at the time and Googled Mary Washington tattoos. There weren't a lot of people out there with Mary Washington tattoos, so there wasn't a lot to work with. So I went with the eagle. And then my roommate, Chris Houchins, and I kind of ran it off of him. Hey, should I do UMW? Should I do MWC? He's like, you got to do MWC. It was MWC when we were here. That's what it is. Yeah. And so that kind of nailed it. And never looked back. It's an important place to me.
Maybe you need another one in honor of the 2026 national champion men basketball team.
We did talk about that. We did talk about that last weekend in Indianapolis. We might see.
Yeah.
We might see.
I would like to just for a brief second talk about your personal side. You've mentioned your wife a few times and your children. Give the listeners more about just who your wife is, when you met, and then also your children, what their ages are and what they're up to now.
Sure. So Jill and I met at the Parker House on the Jersey Shore. Almost 30 years ago now. We are the classic case of we met at a bar.
Yep.
And she was living in York, Pennsylvania at the time.
Isn't that how everyone in New Jersey meets?
Yeah, it should be. And I was living in New Jersey, and we had a long distance relationship until the day we were married. We were engaged in about 5 months. I'm still, we'll talk about some of the mindset things in the commencement speech, but being decisive is super important. And I knew she was the one. I was out kicking my coverage and figured, let me get this wrapped up before she realizes just what a pain in the neck I am. And she's been a great, I tell people all the time, she's been a great partner. My first CFO job, I traveled literally every week for 4 years. While we had 2 kids at home and 2 dogs, and she was working, and people were like, how'd you travel every week? That was the easy part. She was the one home, making sure everything was kind of staying together and dealing with young kids and dogs and all that stuff. And so you need a good partner in life and to be successful. And she's been that for 28 years this October.
Fantastic.
And so, she's awesome. She's a retired speech pathologist who worked on my Jersey accent a little bit through the years and has helped me on that. And then we have 2 daughters. You know, it's funny, you grow up as a guy and you always say, I want a son. And, you know, and being a girl dad is, I'm sure you know, I wouldn't trade it for anything in the world. Our oldest graduated from Loyola in Chicago last May, and she's now working at PwC out in Chicago, and couldn't be more proud of her and what she's doing. And
By the way, I have a great nephew who's going to be a first year at Loyola
awesome.
coming in this fall. So
awesome. Yeah, her experience there was incredible. She learned so much. I think being in a city, coming from, you know, a little bit of a bubble of suburbia, Virginia was just a great experience for her, and I think just really made her into a terrific young lady. And our other daughter is a sophomore at Shenandoah, sports management major, playing basketball team.
Yeah.
Yep. And that has been an incredible experience.
Did you coach
for
her? Did you coach her when she was young? Did you ever do any of that?
1 year.
I think
I think I didn't have the patience for that. And I mean, that's one of the things you talk about a lot with people. Like, I think there were some sacrifices I made for the career to put us in a financial position to be able to give the family the things, a good life, if you will. And I think I tried to always be open and transparent with the kids about, like, why dad had to maybe be away, why dad was working late. And I think it worked because, you know, and also it helped that, like, okay, mom probably did 80% of the raising of them. So that's probably a good thing too, that I didn't have as big a hand in it. But I think just explaining to them, like, why and work ethic is important, and you have to put time into things, and you only get certain things like nice house or car, vacation, clothes, whatever it might be. Like, those things don't come just from, you know, wishes.
Yep.
They come from hard work and
work.
lots of hours. And I think, you know, explaining that to them through the years, I think I'm very, very, I couldn't be happier with where the relationship is with my daughters at this point, even though maybe I missed out on maybe coaching them. Or
So how old are they now?
23 and 19.
Okay, yeah. My daughters are 28 and 26.
23 and 20. Sorry, 23 and 20.
Yeah,
Sorry,
both of
Danny.
them are 20.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's great. So I think we have another thing in common besides being the father of 2 daughters and our Mary Washington connection. Our names both end in an O.
Yes.
And I think this is right. Is your father Italian?
Yes, one of the tattoos is a Italian flag on my chest with my dad's name. Yes, and
Who immigrated? Was it your grandfather who immigrated?
yeah, my grandfather. So my dad was one of 5, and he was the only one born here.
Yep.
All his 3 sisters and brother were all born in Italy. My grandfather made several trips over here. It's kind of, I was fortunate that I got to spend a lot of time with him when I was in college. I'd spent a lot of Friday nights with him when he was in his late 80s, and heard a lot of great stories. But he used to come over here. He'd work, make money, go back, make kids, come back, make money. And then eventually was able to bring the whole family over here. And it just, I think that has a lot to do with who I am too, is just like seeing what he was able to do and the life he built for his family, working 2 jobs, going, I mean, it's, I have a different view of immigration, and I think a lot of views that are out there today that are just too divided, and I don't think people have that experience. I'm fortunate that, you know, it was only 2 generations away, and I was able to kind of hear it firsthand of like what he went through. And I think I wish there was a world we could get back to that, because he was so appreciative of everything that this brought to him.
Similar stories. So we need to sometime over a drink share our common story of being raised by first generation Italian Americans and the sacrifices they made and the belief they had in this country and what they were able to provide for the next generation. It's pretty meaningful.
Yep.
So, as I mentioned earlier, we're talking before your commencement. The listeners will be hearing this after. What is the main takeaway you would like the graduates to have from your talk?
Yeah, I think we'll touch on a couple of things. We touched on it a little bit today about my reconnection to the university and trying to tell them don't lose touch. We talked about Jeff McClurkin a little bit and the different paths that Jeff and I took, but ended up, I like to say, like 30 years later, we're kind of in the same spot of like very successful careers. And, obviously he does it on a day-to-day basis of supporting this university. And it makes me it gives me goosebumps to see where he is in a leadership position and how he helps move this university forward. And it makes my heart warm that I know that we have a grad who loves this place in such a senior position here. And I think the last piece, and probably the most important piece that I'll talk to them folks about, is something I've shared with my daughters through the years. I try to keep things simple, and it's kind of like, it's more of going into life with a mindset, right? And I think you need to be conscientious, which just means like, hey, I'm going to work hard. I'm going to do the right thing. You need to be responsive. I think too often what I have found in my career is a lot of times getting back to people very quickly, and maybe not necessarily with the answer, but just like, hey, I hear you. I know you have this question. Let me do a little bit of research and get back to you. Or just getting back to people both in life and in business has been, I think, a trademark of mine. And lastly, we talked about it a little bit before, not being afraid to make decisions. I think too many people get paralyzed about making the wrong decision. And I try to tell folks, like, you need to make a decision. You're going to have maybe half the information you need. And if you make the wrong decision, no problem. But guess what? You're going to have like another 30% of the information you didn't have before. And now you're going to be able to make a better decision. And I think that was one of the things I learned. I talked earlier about like things I saw that I didn't want to repeat. And I saw people not make decisions because they were afraid to make the wrong decision, or they just felt like they would get blamed if they didn't make the right decision. And I just was like, that was something my dad instilled in me. He was a very decisive person. Mm-hmm. And there was no gray with him. It was black or white, which I appreciate. And I think that's something that has gone a long way, in both for life for me and in my career. I just, even early on, was just not afraid to make a decision.
Yeah. Well, I look forward to your remarks, even more so now. I like to end each show, Lou, with a question for our guest, and that is, what are 3 things that matter most to you right now at this stage in your life?
Yeah, I think one has got to be family. I mean, that's the most important thing, both immediate family, like Jill and the girls, but also just like, I have a brother, his family, uncles, aunts, mom is still around. Yeah, I just think that, that's got to be the main focus. I think the second piece of this is friends. I'm just a big believer in people. I think I read a great book, and now, of course, I'm going to say it, and it's going to escape my brain, A Happiness Advantage. Mm-hmm. And it's all about how we are better when we are interacting with other people. And it makes us they showed in experiments, it makes us healthier. Yeah. Like, it makes us just happier. And I truly believe that. Like, I think that was one of the really great things of that 3-year period when I was retired. I think I had been working so hard for 7 or 8 years that I didn't get to keep up with a lot of I kept up, but not in a face-to-face manner with a lot of people. And that allowed me to kind of reconnect and work around people's schedule and be able to grab a coffee or a lunch or a drink or whatever it was. And so I think people, like friends and people, are important. I think the third thing is just giving back. And I think that plays into why Mary Washington is so important. Like, it's just such an opportunity to meet students and be able to talk to them and just be a sounding board. It makes me so happy to like have a conversation with students and just see what's coming down the pike from a, just society standpoint. It warms my heart, because I think there's a lot of stuff out there that says that's not the case, but you just keep running into students here at Mary Washington or, in Richmond. I'm always trying to connect with people, whether it's young grads or folks looking for their next adventure. A lot of times it's coming through the Mary Washington Network, whatever it might be, just helping people in a little way, maybe just to be a sounding board and share some experiences or make some connections for them, I think is super important.
Well, I appreciate you sharing your experiences with me and with our audience today, Lou, and thank you for being such a wonderful representative of Mary Washington education. Really appreciative of you and everything that you've done in giving back to this institution. I appreciate our friendship that we've formed. A lot of exciting things have been happening here at Mary Washington of late. By the time listeners will be hearing this, we will have done our groundbreaking for a new theater, talked about all the great things that are happening with the foundation, the national championship. We got a lot of momentum here.
Yes.
And it affords me an opportunity to interact with you even more. And so I'm very appreciative of that and that you have played a significant role in this positive momentum that Mary Washington has. So thank you very much.
Well, thank you. I appreciate all the kind words. And as I've told you many a times, as alum, we appreciate how much you've brought to this university and the leadership and the passion, and it makes us all super proud that we know we have you to, guide us for however long you decide to do this for. But it does, you make all alum I talk to so proud, and so thank you for your leadership and all this. It's been great getting to know you and
it's a great
developing
community.
a friendship.
Yep. Appreciate that. Well, thank you for listening to What Matters Most. Look forward. We will have another one coming up this summer. I'm looking forward to that. We won't talk about it now. It's a surprise. But over reunion weekend, we're going to have a special podcast, and looking forward to that. Well, I think we're thinking about even doing it with a live audience, Lou. So that'll be our first time with a live audience. Anyway, thank you for listening. Have a great day.